Shrimad's divine grace, founder of ISKCON, Abhay Charanavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Shrimadbhagavatam ki, their most merciful Lordship Shri Shri Radhakunja Bihari ki, Shri Jagannath Shri Baladev Mahi Subhadra ki, Shri Nataji Shri Balagopal ki, Shri Shri Gaurnitai ki, Nitai Go Prem. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the Lord's feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamadiraye Nasta Prayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naistaki. We are reading from Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 36. Kurvana Yatra Karmani Kurvana Yatra Karmani Bhagavat Chiksas. Get this right. Chiksaya Sakrit. Bhagavat Chiksaya Sakrit. Grinanti Gunanamani. Grinanti Gunanamani. Krishnasya Nusmaranti. Cha Krishnasya Nusmaranti Cha Kurvana Yati Karmani Kurvana Yati Karmani Kurvana Yati Karmani Bhagavat Chiksaya Sakrit Bhagavat Chiksaya Sakrit Bhagavat Chiksaya Sakrit Grinanti Gunanamani Grinanti Gunanamani Grinanti Gunanamani Krishnasya Nusmaranti Cha Krishnasya Nusmaranti Cha Krishnasya Nusmaranti Cha Kurvana Yatra Karmani Bhagavat Chiksaya Sakrit Grinanti Gunanamani Krishnasya Nusmaranti Cha Kurvana Yatra Karmani Bhagavat Chiksaya Sakrit Grinanti Gunanamani Krishnasya Nusmaranti Cha Kurvana while performing Yatra thereupon Karmani duties Bhagavat the personality of Godhead Siksaya by the will of Asakrit constantly Grinanti takes on Guna qualities Namani names Krishnasya of Krishna Anusmaranti constantly constantly remembers Cha and how's the bread? Yeah, it's out now. All done. Thank you. Translation and a purport by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charnadavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers him, his names, and his qualities. Please repeat. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers him, his names, and his qualities. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers him, his names, and his qualities. Purport by his divine grace, an expert devotee of the Lord can mold his life in such a way that while performing all kinds of duties, either for this or the next life, he can constantly remember the Lord's name, fame, qualities, etc. The order of the Lord is distinctly there in the Bhagavad Gita. One should work only for the Lord in all spheres of life. In every sphere of life, the Lord should be situated as the proprietor. According to the Vedic rites, even in the worship of some demigods, like Indra, Brahma, Saraswati, and Ganesh, the system is that in all circumstances, the representation of Vishnu must be there as Yagneshwar, or the controlling power of such sacrifices. It is recommended that a particular demigod be worshipped for a particular purpose, but still, the presence of Vishnu is compulsory in order to make the function proper. Apart from such Vedic duties, even in our ordinary dealings, for example, in our household affairs, or in our business or profession, we must consider that the result of all activities must be given over to the Supreme Enjoyer, Lord Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has declared himself to be the Supreme Enjoyer of everything, the Supreme Proprietor of every planet, and the Supreme Friend of all beings. No one else but Lord Sri Krishna can claim to be the proprietor of everything within his creation. A pure devotee remembers this constantly, and in doing so, he repeats the transcendental name, fame, and qualities of the Lord, which means that he is constantly in touch with the Lord. The Lord is identical with his name, fame, etc. And therefore, to be associated with his name, fame, etc. constantly means actually to associate with the Lord. The major portion of our monetary income, not less than 50%, must be spent to carry out the order of Lord Krishna. Not only should we give the profit of our earning to this cause, but we must also arrange to preach this cult of devotion to others, because that is also one of the orders of the Lord. The Lord definitely says that no one is more dear to him than one who is always engaged in the preaching work of the Lord's name and fame all over the world. The scientific discoveries of the material world can also be equally engaged in carrying out his order. He wants the message of the Bhagavad Gita to be preached amongst his devotees. It may not be so done amongst those who have no credit of austerities, charity, education, etc. Therefore, the attempt must go on to convert unwilling men to become his devotees. Lord Chaitanya has taught a very simple method in this connection. He has taught the lesson for preaching the transcendental message through singing, dancing, and refreshment. As such, 50% of our income may be spent for this purpose. In this fallen age of quarrel and dissension, if only the leading and wealthy persons of society agree to spend 50% of their income in the service of the Lord, as it is taught by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there is absolute certainty of converting this hell of pandemonium to the transcendental abode of the Lord. No one will disagree to partake in a function where good singing, dancing, and refreshment are administered. Everyone will attend such a function, and everyone is sure to feel individually the transcendental presence of the Lord. Excuse me. This alone will help the attendant associate with the Lord and thereby purify himself in spiritual realization. The only condition for successfully executing such spiritual activities is that they must be conducted under the guidance of a pure devotee who is completely free from all mundane desires, fruitive activities, and dry speculations about the nature of the Lord. No one has to discover the nature of the Lord. It is already spoken by the Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita, especially, and in all other Vedic literatures generally. We have simply to accept them in toto and abide by the orders of the Lord. That will guide us to the path of perfection. One can remain in his own position. No one has to change his position, especially in this age of variegated difficulties. The only condition is that one must give up the habit of dry speculation aimed at becoming one with the Lord. And after giving up such lofty, puffed-up vanities, one may very submissively receive the orders of the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam from the lips of a bona fide devotee whose qualification is mentioned above. That will make everything successful without a doubt. Jai. Om Jnanatimandasya Giranjana Shalakaya Chakshushun Manitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Srila Prabhupada is revealing here the system that was laid out for book distribution. So this was even for distributors who had households. They would go out, distribute books, and then what they collected after the expenses were paid for, they had to pay for the books, right? And generally they got twice as much as what the book cost. So if the book cost $5 to print, then they got $10 for the book, minimum. But the art, the science, the magnificent experience, transcendental experience of giving Krishna consciousness to people is that when you open up their heart, wow, then they want to give you. One of the sayings used to be, well, we normally limit our donations to just $100, but in your case, we've made an exception. So like that, the devotee develops, through experience, a expertise at being able to present the philosophy in such a way that people want more. And Srila Prabhupada reveals how then, even in Grihastha, after all the expenses are paid for, then what's left, half he gives to the temple. And so in that way then, of course, he's already given the temple what the books were costing, right? So he paid for the books. And then half goes more for the furtherance, more books being distributed. Jai Shri Jai Jagannath, Jai Baladev, Jai Shri Jai Shri Gurunatha. Well, we had devotees, now this was back in the 70s and 80s, they were bringing in $200-300 a day. And as you could see, if $100 went towards the cost of the books, and And there was another 100. At that time, $100 a day was like paid for. Yeah, people, well, that's what they were making it work. So, Krishna consciousness would be easy for a person who is even having a job, quote unquote, a job in the material world, to be able to transfer immediately into having a position in Krishna consciousness. So now, it looks to me as though it's because of desire in the hearts of human beings to be able to have a position in what is looked at in most of the nations of the world as functional society, looked at by Krishna consciousness as dysfunctional society, because people are not doing things the way that Krishna advises them to conduct their lives. And so there's so much chaos. And here we're being given the solution to the chaos and how to set things in order. People don't look at their jobs as their duty normally. People look at their jobs as a way to get advanced in life materially, socially, and accepted. But duty carries with it responsibility in that what energy we are using in this world, it's not ours to use. We can't control it, but we are using it and claiming it to be ours and claiming us that we have the right. This is this day and age, the last couple hundred years. This is what separated the people who were rebelling against the tyrannical control of government that was being exercised by many of the leaders who were at time in the European colonies. But they came here hoping to establish a more free form of government that would allow the people to be able to have more of their own choices in life, to be able to determine for themselves, apart from the state determining for them what religion they would believe, how much money they could make, what kinds of work they can involve themselves in, so many things. But with that freedom also came the breaking of God's laws, which to some extent, you could say, in these previous ages, as we can see as years go on, the degradation of humankind that's taking place, profanity and all these sideline entrenchments of the mind that human beings are finding themselves in. When they give themselves over, when a human being gives himself over to the lust of his mind, then he gives himself over to the control that lust creates by the karmic actions, reactions caused by his own actions. So in this age, the minds being so weak, even lusty desires and these things are not acted upon immediately. So we use our minds, but even so, in the using of our minds, we are not fully using the full capacity of its limitations. So let me explain that a little bit. Because see, the mind itself has manifested within this material universe a form that is able to, how do we say, relate with the external energy of God. And where we came from, We are made of the same substance as the body of God, which is made of the internal energy of God. And so thinking the external energy of God is ours to enjoy. Even we look upon God. If we are thinking God to be that which is made for our enjoyment, then this is a false ego. And then God, the giving nature that he is as it's revealed here. Krishna is all giving. And so in that we desire, then he gives it. We want to enjoy. You want to enjoy God. You want to enjoy his external energy. Then here is the material universe, an external manifestation for you and me and all of us who have come here to try and enjoy. Get out of it what you can. But then Krishna says, here's a way to enjoy it the best way possible, by purifying the senses, by taking those foodstuffs that he's pleased with, those things that are healthy for us, those things as well that by his glance upon it will also give us realization, which see all this food in the material world that is not offered to Krishna as only the means of further desire for our contact with the material. Yeah. And so it creates in our life a trap. What's that old song about? I'm caught in a trap. Yeah. All bound up. And this is what we find ourselves as souls then, studying and seeing Krishna conscious literature. We come to the understanding that actually, as long as we are trying to use these material bodies for our own pleasures, then it is a trap. But then now, being shown by the teachings Krishna is giving us, he's revealing to us that we can use these same bodies that would otherwise ensnare us further into maybe even a lower form. Now, we can use these same bodies to gain the highest perfection possible this human life has to offer. And it all comes from a transference of the consciousness, from thinking about how to please ourselves, how to please our bodies, how to please our mind, how to please the senses, and thinking how to responsibly take our duties that this human form of life brings with it. Duty means I have a I must do something. It is required of me. That's what duty means. It is my have to. So that's what Dharma actually is too. If we want to gain the highest goal, which is getting out of the material energies, control, becoming free from the material universe entirely, being able to leave this place of death, this place of birth, death, old age, and disease, and getting out entirely into that realm, completely made of Satchidananda. And now being that we are ourselves made of that substance, hearing the truth creates the longing we should be having to know that substance of truth and to know that bliss of the realization of that truth, that Krishna is revealing himself through these pastimes that Vedavyasa is writing about Krishna. Because it's like yesterday, Dave and I were talking about, Bhakti Dave and I, we're talking about the fact that Narada Muni came out of Brahma's own body. And this was before the foundation of the world. And yet, he reveals pastimes of having taken birth from a mother. So, we were talking about wanting to know the details about how that happened. But, see, this reveals how devotees' own discussions about these topics create within them the desire to want to know how these things came about. And that desire, in and of itself, is a spiritual desire, wanting to know. That's the kind of desire Krishna accredits the pursuer of knowledge to. So, 4 different kinds of people come to Krishna, and those who are pursuing to know the truth about him, he considers that to be the highest. And so because that's the state of a devotee's mind all the time. The problem with and the difference between the devotee and those people who are pursuing those same, wanting to make those same endeavors towards the fulfillment of spiritual satisfaction, don't know where to get it. And yet the longing is there that the soul has to know eternity, to know the bliss of knowing eternity, to have relationship with people who have experienced this glorious purity and love of God. That is the purest energy that there is, and that can be experienced in this universe to the extent that it can, by the limitations we give ourselves to be able to experience it by developing desires aside from that. So through the day we can catch ourselves. I want this, I want that, and this is all false ego. We can have what Krishna will provide for us by knowing that we have a duty to do, and what our duty requires, Krishna provides. That duty requires we offer everything that we have access to Krishna. That means we're going to have access to something. And everything that we need. Because we're spreading the truths that Krishna wants to have spread, then certainly with him in control of everything that the earth is providing, then we being in his purpose and knowing we're taking part in those activities, he's going to give us the strength and the ability, the empowerment of our words. If he empowers his own name, the scripture says, Shikshastika says, he is empowered. He has put all of his spiritual energy in that name. Then how much he will put in when the devotee speaks that name. Yeah. See, that's even though when it's spoken by Krishna, of course, it has tremendously bigger resolve. But nevertheless, the name Krishna, just the 2 syllables, Krishna, spoken from our own physical bodies made of mucus, pus, and blood, are furthering the transcendental sound vibration that is of an eternal nature. That also, see, in this that Krishna expects of us to fulfill as a duty, his name does that coming out of us automatically, because that's his nature. So his name goes out to fulfill what purpose he will, people hearing it. See, if we're outside, the grass hears. The grass can be affected by the vibration of sound created by the vocal cords of a human being. And how could I know this? Because it's been shown and proven in Dr. Bose's experiments with plants that even the thoughts of a human being can affect the life of a plant, and not just special plants. All these plants are sensitive to the thoughts of human beings. They can't tell us that. They're stuck in a body without the ability to communicate now. However, I witnessed, this was in the 70s, Native American Indians have a philosophy that is also profound in their ability to communicate with lower forms of life, animals, and trees as well. There's one little Iroquois boy, 3 or 4 years old. He sat by a tree for 3 solid days. His mother cared for him, taking care of everything he needed. But by their philosophy, they know that there is communication that is able to be developed with every other form of life. And see, this philosophy is incorporated into the reality of reincarnation. The consciousness is there, but only able to be brought out by one who is themselves realized of the fact that there is life, soul life, the same way we are soul life, dwelling now and contained in every form of life that's manifesting as having breath, able to replicate itself, growing. These are all evidences of life that the soul is manifesting in the material world. But we know by observation of the lower forms of energy that the world is, we cannot know this superior science of either self-realization, of what to speak, God realization. And if we think God realization is knowing ourselves to be God ourselves, we'll fool ourselves. And then there again, thereby trap ourselves in that subtle, lusting desire that wants to claim this energy as ours for me to enjoy. That's all what this desire to be God is. I want to be the enjoyer. You know, I want to control everybody around me. I want to control everything around me. And this is all leading us back into the same kind of place that we're in. So now we just turn that energy that we are aiming at enjoyment for the pleasure of this physical body towards the pleasure of the Supreme Person, who has our best interests in mind in giving all of these literatures to us. Yeah. He wants us back to God more than we want to go. That's the thing, that's the problem. It is our will that he's giving these literatures to help us pray. And it is the most difficult thing to do, especially if we're given in our minds the belief that we have to do that on our own. And that's what they're all doing it on. Like the Bible says, each man must work out his salvation with fear and trembling. That's like a commandment almost in the Bible. We don't have that same understanding. In Krishna consciousness, we are working together. When we cook with love in our hearts for everybody that's going to get the benefit of it, we're cooking for Krishna, but everybody else is getting the benefit of it. In effect, this is why Krishna comes for his own pleasure, but in so doing, he comes with being able to liberate the souls that will lean towards loving him and returning to where they came from, where we all came from getting back home. Isn't it? We go somewhere to visit for a while, but there's no place like home. It's that saying, right? But then, we have to look at this world as not our home, but the consciousness we can live in. We can live at home in our minds. Consciousness can bring us home by having that pure thought, Krishna. So if we're always thinking, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. This even thought will relieve us. It brings great relief to the soul because it is the divine energy, freeing, having all the qualities of the person, Krishna himself. These names that we are able to recite will give the consciousness that we are experiencing, the awareness of, that we can be having at every moment. We won't, of course, through the day, we'll trouble our minds with different things. But as we chant, then Krishna can develop the strength of that mind to give us every day a little more ability to go a little farther each day, just one step further each day. Like Srila Prabhupada says when we go in the kitchen, leave it just a little bit cleaner than you found it when you got there. God, if everybody did it, we wouldn't have a mess to clean up when we use the kitchen. John, any comments, any questions? It's just about time for Prashant.
Prabhu, I have one question.
Yes.
Today while we are reading,
speak loud so that microphone can hear.
While we are reading, we got one who preaches Supreme Lord likes more, right? So, but in 10 offenses, we are having instructing a faithless person is also an offense. So how can we take this?
There's a way to preach. Now, someone who was expert at this was Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. He wrote a whole book about Krishna and didn't say Krishna once. But he wrote it in such a way that an atheist could pick it up and find interest in it. Yeah. So see, that's the sense. We don't have to give them the name. But when we start talking about eternity, we start talking about absolute truth, and even principles, reincarnation, vegetarianism. These are all concepts of Krishna consciousness that, quote unquote, atheists.
So indirectly, we introduce them.
Indirectly. Very good word, yes, to describe. But we are incognito sometimes also. Narad Muni, he's incognito means nobody knows who he is. And yet he goes out in the mainstream just giving truth to people enough to grab their hearts and then make them look that way from there on in. We got to grab their hearts so they'll look to the right direction. Grab it with love, with the arm outreached from our own heart that's holding on to Krishna's hand. With one hand we hold Krishna's hand, with the other hand we reach out to the general public and say, please hold my hand with Krishna too. Yeah. That's the heart reaching out. Heart of love. That's what we need. Hearts of love. It was Srila Prabhupada's love for Krishna and seeing Krishna's love for humanity that gave him the impulse to want to give to all human beings that he came in contact with. That we have the great privilege now, being able to share friendships with one another, being able to share this institution that Srila Prabhupada has given, to be able to break down this false ego of I, me, and mine. But if we are out there in the world, we're making it very difficult for ourselves, and we can become Bhaktivinoda. He was a magistrate judge working in a political system which is considered to be the most mundane of all, you know. No spiritually minded person gets involved in politics, right? But what's Bhagavad Gita? It's a war based on political preferences each side had against each other, that they made in their minds and determined was absolutely right. And one side was, and one side wasn't. We get the same thing fighting today. Right fights against wrong in the material world. But Krishna consciousness means establishing what right is and living with the results. And the result of Krishna consciousness is a transformed planet that will eventually become a heavenly planet. Srila Prabhupada says, within Kali Yuga. We will have such a yuga within Kali Yuga. That's what this preaching will bring. But we got to realize it. We got to see, even devotees are bound by limitations. They have restricted their minds because of experience in the material world of what we've come to believe is possible. And what is that word, impossible? Srila Prabhupada says, impossible is a word in the Fool's Dictionary. So we don't have to read the Fool's Dictionary. We can believe everything Krishna says and everything we realize we've come to know through Bhagavatam, through Bhagavad Gita, that is possible. Now we can practice in our lives and experience the truth of. All these glorious stories about devotees of Krishna are not just for somebody else to have the experience of. They're for us, you and me and all of us, where this path is given so that we can become so close to Krishna. Almost we don't know anybody else, just Krishna. And automatically then we know everybody else. Just like Prithu Maharaj. Just by looking at a person, he knows everything about them. That's Prithu Maharaj. But that was given to him by unction of Krishna's power, Krishna's potency. All these reveal what affects a person experiences by simply having some contact with Krishna. It's so amazing. And we're being given that opportunity. Wow. It's special. And we're special, and we have to know we must be special in Krishna's eyes for him to be wanting to reveal this to us. Isn't it? Yeah. No one so dear can be to us as Krishna himself. Yeah.
Prabhu, one more question.
Yeah.
You said constantly remembering Krishna brings closer to Krishna. But my question is how can we remember while we are studying or while we are doing job?
Yeah. See, that's why Srila Prabhupada is saying, for entertainment, mostly for people in the world, when they go out for looking to do something happy, they look for singing and dancing and refreshments. So, take prasadam with you, something to drink. This is refreshment. And through the day, even thinking about prasadam, it may be, in our minds, we're looking at it as a means to satisfy the senses. But because if we're looking at it from having been offered, that it takes on the quality it takes because it's offered to Krishna. If we're thinking like that, it's no longer food for our satisfaction. It's food now that is coming from Krishna, that is having a positive effect upon the ability to free us from the control the senses have. So it's not ordinary food. So everything we look at through the day, when you're working hard, you can't wait till lunch, right? When's lunch coming? Let's see. And now we're thinking, when's breakfast coming? But that breakfast is going to be prasadam. So that thought is not the thought we're having to satisfy the senses. That thought we're having now is to continue our ability, which Krishna in us is, to perform those duties we have to carry out now. So, but what happens is, automatically it takes on a pleasurable effect for the body without our having to take thought of it. Just by acknowledging that it's coming from Krishna. And before accepting it, we offer appreciation for it. And that pleases Krishna too. Everything. All these activities, Srila Prabhupada says for the devotee to engage in is something Krishna finds pleasing. And if you can please God, you don't have to do anything else. You please the spiritual master, so that pleases Krishna. Yeah. John, thank you so much for your questions also. Much needed. They're not asking the right questions, which is why they're not getting the right answers. They get lots of answers, but not the right ones. And we need the right answers for this day and age that we're living in, because we're all facing that last day we're going to spend here. And we got to get ready for that day. And it'll take our whole lives to do that. Because if we don't spend our whole life doing it, we won't get the best result we could. Jai. Shrimadbhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki